Death and Aliens, an in-depth look at horror and sci-fi TV from two friends who vaguely know what they're doing. I'm MK.
And I'm Courtney.
Courtney, how are you?
Um, I'm okay. I've improved slightly if you watched last week. Because I'm learning TikTok. Always something new with me, I know.
Yes.
Um, so I've been learning TikTok and practicing, and I've just posted my second off the cuff video, which feels very strange. And I don't know how I feel about it, but it's okay. I'm just gonna do it anyways.
It's okay. Your first off the cuff video, I showed it to Dan and then my comment on it, and he was like, "No, that's really good. You guys are funny." And I was like,
Aw, thanks,
"Thanks."
Dan. Thanks, Dan. I try to be funny. I do my best. Yeah, but I'm okay. We're doing marathon recording because I leave in 2 days to never come back. It seems. So yeah, first up on my agenda, I'm hitting Chicago for the first time. It'll be too late for you to give me suggestions when you've heard this, but
Very,
maybe you'll
very,
see our anything and you'll just be like, oh, Chicago, that's fun.
right.
Because I don't know Chicago. I have friends there. Zach from Philly. He now is in Chicago, so now he is Zach from Chicago.
Nice.
And then Rachel's cousin lives there, and then I met some guys South by Southwest. Caitlin's got a couple of shows booked, so like I'm very excited. I found a little speakeasy, I think is what it is. I don't know. You go through like the laundromat that I sent to Caitlin ages ago. We found a beach, so I gotta do that. Pack for the beach. I haven't washed laundry. I leave in 2 days. I haven't washed laundry or unpacked from my last trip. I don't know what I'm packing for this trip, but I'm gonna be gone for
A
14
while.
days.
Yeah.
Um, maybe plus. I don't know how math works. So I'm just kind of like hanging in there. Hoping for the best. I'm very excited about Chicago though, because I've never been and I love seeing new places. So that's my next 2 months, which will be really cool anyways. I'm gonna be a lot of new places, a lot of cities and states to mark off the list. So do you know anything about Chicago? You've been there, yeah?
I have not. Nope.
No? I just
No.
assume you've been to all of the
I have
places.
been a lot of places. I've never been
Mhm.
to Chicago. I do also have friends who live in Chicago, but
Mm,
um not ones that I like talk to all the time. Ones
mm,
that like I'm close enough that if I was going and I was like, "Hey, I'm going to be in Chicago this
right.
day. Maybe we could catch up." It would be one thing, but not ones that I'm like, "Hey, my friend is going to be in Chicago this
Right.
day." Like
Do they like music? Like if you shared on your Instagram that I was bringing music, would they maybe
probably.
go?
Yeah, one of them's in a pirate band.
That's perfect. I love it. Tell them to come to Fox's Irish Pub.
Perfect. I'll do that. Um,
I'll send you the information so you can do it.
yeah,
But yeah, so we'll both learn about Chicago then in a couple
it'll be
weeks when I talk about
great.
it again.
Yeah.
So I'm okay. So how are you?
I'm okay. I am very busy right now, and most of my being busy involves having to talk to people.
Ugh, gross.
Um, like I have, I'm in the middle of buying a house and I'm in the middle of getting a new job and I'm in the middle of planning a wedding. So like every day my to-do list is like email this person, call this person, plan this meeting. And I just don't like it. So
Mhm.
plus it's like summer, so all your friends from work are like, "Oh, I haven't seen you in a while. Let's do something." So I'm like, "Okay, I have like this dinner planned and this dinner planned." And like I just don't like people that much.
Right.
Um, and so like last week I was supposed to go to the Bills practice. Um, and literally, like, Dan and we got dressed, we were in the car, and it was kind of raining, but it wasn't like bad. It was like enough that you would need a poncho, but not enough that you would not want to go.
Right.
And so we stopped at Target to buy ponchos, and turns out they only had one left in the entire store.
Ow, their Target.
Right, there are two of us. And also it was like
Hmm.
an $11 top uh poncho, but it had like a zip like not how like sometimes when you like get a zipper stuck on something it like bubbles. It doesn't rip, but it bubbles enough that it
Yeah, yeah,
could
yeah.
rip. It had like a tear or like a bubble tear on it. And he was like, "I'm not paying $11 for something that's already ripped." So we were like, okay. So we were like leaving and we were like gonna head to Home Depot because apparently online Home Depot said that they had ponchos. I don't know. He was Googling
Like a
things.
liar. Hmm.
Well, I'm sure they did. I just don't know what they would have looked like. They would have been like gardening ponchos or some shit. Um,
What a fun time.
so we were like driving from Target to Home Depot, and as we are like driving, I was just kind of like sitting there. And the other thing is Dan had a migraine, and
Oh,
so like he was just gonna go because I got the tickets. And I was like, "Do you even really want to go?" And he was like, I mean, do you want to go? I go, not really. I just wanted to do something nice for you because I know you like the Bills and we never get to like go to practices or games or anything.
oh,
And he was like, do you want to just not go? And I was like, yeah. So instead of going to Home Depot, we went to the pet store and got food for Pip and Tops to get more Dr. Pepper. And then we went home and we watched the Olympics and cooked dinner.
I
And
love
it
that.
was the best. And I have decided that my favorite thing, and this is going to be so sappy, and I'm so sorry, and everyone just like punched me in the face for a second. I decided that my favorite thing in the world is that I'm just going to get to go home and make dinner with him every day and like
Gross.
not have to talk to other people.
Gross. That is sappy.
It's gross. And like, let me tell you, there's times where like I was listening to a podcast and trying to like type something on my computer and he was playing a video game. And then he was continuing to narrate his video game and talk to me like I wasn't listening to a podcast.
Mm.
I don't know anything about the game. He's asking me questions, telling me things that are happening. I literally don't know. And then he just starts singing because he can't function without talking out loud. And I was like, I'm gonna break off with you and leave right now. So like it's not that I'm always in love with him. I mean, no, I'm always in love with him, but like sometimes
But you don't always want to be in the room with him.
right. Like I'm still a cynical princess. I still don't like
Right.
people, but like I just got so happy that like I can just like be like, no, I hate everyone else. Let's go home and eat dinner every day
That is nice.
for the rest of my life.
I do love that for
Once we
you.
buy a house.
Right. You did you're working on it. It's
Working on it.
almost.
It's fine. It's great.
Mhm. Love that. Love that.
Yeah. So, since I'm being all sweet and sappy and you're only like kind of a functioning person, um,
Facts.
this lovely advice will be more for you than for me. But what do you got for me today?
Well, this one I'm gonna apply it to my much less high stakes context in the most dramatic form possible.
Perfect.
Um, it is really meant for people going through a lot harder stuff than me, but it's okay. Um, I can be changed by what happens to me, but I refuse to be reduced by it. Maya Angelou in Letter to My Daughter.
That's amazing. I
Yeah.
agree. I feel the same way about me and
Mhm.
having to talk to people.
Right.
But
That's how I feel about my
I
laptop.
also think that like it's probably more about like people who have like been abused or have like
Right.
terminal
100%.
illnesses. But we can use it too.
Right. But it currently applies to my mental state. So here we are. It's
Well,
fine. It's totally okay.
your mental state's not about to get much better because
My,
today we are
ugh,
talking about Stargate SG-1 Season 6, Episode 12, Unnatural Selection.
I almost quit the podcast. I almost quit the podcast when I watched this episode.
To be fair, I almost quit the podcast when I watched the next episode of Hannibal. So
Yeah, no, I also almost quit after that episode. So it's fine.
it's
It's a rough weekend,
um this was rated 8.6 stars, which is the highest of the season so far.
which is fair, but still makes me angry.
It came out on Friday, January 10th, 2003. So we are back from
New year.
we
New
are
year, new us.
New year, new us. We're back from our mid-winter hiatus, and by mid-winter I mean August to January.
Yeah. I remember that at the like end of this episode that we had to wait many months for it to come back and just also got angry again.
Yeah. So we waited 6 months for this episode. Luckily, we then didn't have to wait after this episode, but after waiting 6 months for the show to come back, we then watched this.
Yeah.
um, but of course, it's a new year. So a lot of things have changed in the last 6 months. Our new number one song is Lose Yourself by Eminem because
Yeah, it is.
we're that old.
We are in 2003. That's the best thing that's happened all
Uh,
day.
the number one book is weirdly something we have already talked about, because this book like popped in and out of the charts for like 8 months. It was like number one and then it went away and then it came back and then it went away. And that is The Lovely Bones.
Oh, oh my God. I am so sorry to derail immediately. Um, so as I had told you, I've been listening to my comfort podcast, and that's why we drink.
Yeah.
And I watched it and then took a break from it to watch this episode and then immediately had to go back because that was more comforting.
Yeah.
But I listened to an episode yesterday about Alice Sebold
Yeah.
because I did not know all of the backstory of her life. Do you know?
I don't.
Oh my God. Um she was attacked, she was assaulted. And they arrested the wrong man for it. And he was in jail for like 30 or 40 years. And she wrote this novel during that time about an abuse, obviously, if you've
Yeah.
read the book. And she wrote another book called Lucky that was supposed to be kind of like a memoir, but like it turns out that a lot of it was wrong because she had identified the wrong man. Like she is the one who identified him wrong. And not to say like it's not that she was going off of like, I just am gonna do this. I know it, like she didn't know she was doing the wrong thing, it seems like at the time.
Right.
But she did identify the wrong man, and I think it seemed to have had a lot to do with how they lined up like the did the lineup for her to like pick someone. It is what had no idea. Like when Christine started telling the story and she was like, this is the story of the assault of Alice Sebold. And I was like, that sounds like the author of The Lovely Bones. I was like, surely it's not. And we get to like the end of the case and it totally is. Oh my gosh, it's go look up her story if you
Which
haven't.
which
And
which episode of the podcast is this?
like 340 something. I don't know.
Great.
Let's
So I'll
see.
listen
I can
to
tell
it.
you if it
I was like, so
was
I'll listen to it in 17
6
years.
years. Well, I had a lot more faith in you than you did. Let's see. It was one of the ones I just listened to. So where's the videos? I will tell everyone because if you
Yeah.
even like kind of want to hear this story, like highly recommend. It was so well done. Christine does a lot of good research. And I think it was this one. I have to look at the description. I watched like 5 episodes yesterday. They're like 2.5 hours long each. So like also
Yeah.
buckle up. Nope, it was the one after this because that's Holly done. This one. So oh my gosh, I don't know why it's taking me so long to find it. I'm just gonna stall for a minute. This one. So it's episode 373. It's called The Thirsty Little Rat Inn and the Kuwu Girls. And then M also covers the Longfellow's Wayside Inn, which is a haunted inn. So it's very like classic M story.
Yeah.
And then you get the case of it's Anthony Broadwater and Alice Sebold. So it's my gosh, I am so sorry for
No,
immediately
that's
having an intense reaction. It was
fascinating.
absolutely insane. And I
I
had no idea until yesterday.
I need
Because
that
I read
again.
this book when it like around the time it came out, because we were this was I probably read it in junior high or like middle school. Like I was
See,
probably 11 or
I
12.
yeah,
So
I didn't. So it came out in like 2002. I didn't read it till 2011.
I definitely read it before then. I think I was in junior high. I read it before I should have read it, to be clear.
Yeah. I
You
mean,
know,
I thought me in 2011 shouldn't have read it. Like,
also true. Like it's a really heartbreaking. Like it's
yeah.
heartbreaking knowing, even though it's like a fiction book, but also knowing the like backstory of what happened to Alice, like makes it even more heartbreaking.
Yeah.
So do
Um,
with that what you will for your mental state.
um, it's okay. And a much less depressing and heartbreaking note,
Great, excellent.
although kind of depressing that people enjoyed this. The number one movie this day was Just Married, which was starring
Who was in this one?
Ashton
Mm-hmm.
Kutcher and Brittany Murphy. They like played friends who drunkenly got married in Vegas, or
In
she was like,
Vegas. Mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't know. R.I.P. Brittany Murphy, but like, fuck, what a terrible movie.
That's also that yeah, well, it came out around this. That was the one that came out around the same time as Just Friends and Married in Vegas. Like there were like 5 movies that were all very similar
Yeah.
that came out at the same time. And yeah,
Or
they
like
were all
my
pretty
boss,
terrible.
wasn't my boss's daughter in that time, like
I think
too?
so. Like they
Ugh.
were all kind of the same time. It's just that's
Two,
also it. If you
two,
if you need
two
another depressing
thousands, yeah,
story,
2000s raunchy rom-coms are like,
a time and place.
yeah, because these ones are the ones that are more comedy than romantic
Hmm.
comedy. But they're like raunchy. I don't know.
Yeah.
They're terrible. I'm not a fan.
That's another story though. Like I think Christine covers it ages ago, though. Like it's been a long time. A lot of
Oh,
podcasts do cover
what?
it. The
Brittany
story of
Murphy?
Brittany Murphy because it's so crazy. And
Yeah.
I don't know where I fall under my belief standard of if it was like what's the thing in your house that kills you?
Carbon monoxide.
Yeah, if it was like a carbon monoxide or like a chemical leak, or if it was an OD on drugs, or if it was like a real
I
like someone planned it. Like I don't know where it falls, but Ashton Kutcher is super involved because he had to go give testimony. He's the one who like found her, I think, or it was really
something.
rough.
Yeah.
Like it was really rough. So again,
Um.
here I am to bring it down.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Sorry. I'm just writing down what's that thing in your house that kills you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
That that feels like a
that's
good
it.
podcast title.
It does feel like a good podcast title. Um,
Yeah, so on this day, while all the other depressing things are happening, the good news is that Charlotte gets their is officially approved to get an NBA team. Um,
oh,
yeah, it was
we've
only
talked about
we
this.
have talked about this
Okay.
because they're the Charlotte Hornets, but they
Right.
weren't always the Charlotte Hornets. Uh,
Right.
they were in 2003 when they were first officially licensed, they were the Charlotte Bobcats.
Hmm.
Um, And we talked about this because I was really confused about when things were where in the names of teams
Yeah.
because the NBA is weird. But they were an expansion team, so they didn't move from anywhere else to Charlotte. They just
Right.
made a new team in Charlotte. But then the names were weird, and a different team had a name that was the Hornets. But then
Right.
Charlotte took the name Hornets. But I don't know. Anyway, this was the day that all that happened.
Hmm.
Um, Charlotte has only had a basketball team since 2003, and it was 2014 when they stopped being the Hornets. So,
Yeah.
which is weird because I distinctly remember having a toy as a child that was a Charlotte Hornet. So, like,
Well, I mean, they what started 2003 as the Hornets, and you said they ended in
no, they
2014.
started as the Bobcats in 2003.
Oh, okay. Mandela?
Yeah, that 100% is in a Mandela effect because my grandma, I distinctly remember my grandma's house, her first townhouse in North Carolina, which she lived in from 1997 until 2004. And I had
Mm-hmm.
a doll that was the green and blue Charlotte Hornet.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently, the Charlotte Hornets did not exist in
Mm-hmm.
2004. So I don't know
Right,
where this
right.
doll came from. So this is the one Mandela effect that I like am 100% behind. I don't understand Charlotte basketball.
I like that. I like that. That's chaotic like that.
Yeah. Also chaotic. This is the day that North Korea officially pulled out of the nuclear non-proliferation treaty.
Hmm. Good times. Good times.
No,
I don't even need to bring this down.
that one, there's
This was
not,
already there.
this one's already rock fucking bottom.
Nothing for
Um,
me to do.
This episode was directed by Andy Makita with a story by Robert C. Cooper and Brad Wright and a teleplay by Brad Wright. Excerpts by Jeff King. Because there were some scenes in this episode from I don't think there were any flashbacks. I don't know why Jeff King is listed as having excerpts, unless they're talking about the stuff with Reese at the beginning.
Oh yeah, I bet that's what it is. I was about to say
Because
what episodes, like what's the recap? But yeah. That's
yeah,
why.
the recap was the stuff with Reese, and that does feel like really big. But now I'm like, what episode did Jeff King even write that like is why he's credited for this? So I'm gonna look that up and I'm gonna talk while I'm doing that so that I don't
We're
completely
so
have dead space.
good at that.
The editing was by Eric Hill. The actor I do actually have a lot to say about the guest actor this time, so like that'll take some time. The actor is a man named Ian Buchanan. He played first of the Replicators, and he is known for The Bold and the Beautiful, General Hospital, Panic Room, and Shutter the Doors.
I don't know what that is.
I don't either. The other three I know. The other three I know, but that one I don't.
Mm-hmm.
So he is a very fascinating man. He was born in Scotland, and both of his parents were alcoholics. He has 5 siblings, and by the time he was 14, he and all 5 of his siblings were orphaned. And so he had to work in order to they had all dreamed of moving to America, but then his parents died and he had to work to have enough money because he's the second of the 6 kids. So he had to work to like help his siblings stay alive, because his parents were both dead.
Wow.
Then he was on vacation with his siblings in Spain, and his good looks, just like somebody like just walked up to him on the streets in Spain and was like, "You should be a model."
I mean, he's got a good cheekbone structure.
He's got a beautiful face. Like just like, and we're talking, he was born in 1957 or 1967. So like, no, 1957. He was born in 1957. So like, if he looked that composed in 2003, imagine what on vacation in the 70s in Spain he looked like.
Yeah, when he's in his 20s, like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I looked him up to see if I had seen him in anything recently.
Yeah.
And saw his birthday and was like, what?
Yeah. So he did he got a modeling gig. He was doing some modeling, and then in the 80s, so in his 20s, he moved to New York City and went to very odd. Sorry. Jeff King only wrote episodes in season 1. Oh no, sorry, that was as a producer. I'm looking at the wrong category. Okay. I was like, what? Where did I go? As a writer, also only season 1.
That's weird.
Very weird.
I'm trying to think, did they do anything from the first season?
No. Unless he like just wrote literally an excerpt, like a piece of this episode.
Oh, maybe so.
Maybe. Okay. Anyway, so back to Ian Buchanan. He is in New York City in the 80s. He went to the Lee Strasberg Theater Institute to learn acting because at this point he was just a model. And while in school for acting was just immediately offered a role on General Hospital because again, unreasonably good looking man. He was doing all kinds of stuff in the 80s and 90s. He had a role in Twin Peaks. He had a role in one of the 90s Columbo movies. He then continued doing daytime soaps that whole time, and in 1997 won a Daytime Emmy for acting for his performances in Bold and the Beautiful. At one point, he was Giorgio Armani's personal fitting model.
What a career.
Right. And he is still alive. He's still thriving. Everything online says he lives with this man, and all of his pictures online are like posted of him and this other gentleman together. I haven't found anything that specifically says it's his partner, but based on the fact that they do everything together and live together and are men of that generation, I can imagine them just like not calling it that.
Right.
But he and his partner, whether that is in housing and friendship or romance, they love to travel and garden. His entire Instagram is just gardening pictures.
Oh, bless him.
Obsessed. So that is Ian Buchanan.
Good for him.
Yeah. I have like an entire page of notes on him, and it's been a while since I've had anybody that I could like talk about that much. So I was like, I got this.
Yeah.
So our previously on starts with a flash back to the story about Reese. We have some scenes of the replicators. We have the X-303 kidnapping, and then it ends with Thor appearing. Because as soon as the previously on is over, we immediately pick up at the exact same second that we ended the last episode. It's like legitimately a total part two.
Which is always a nice
Yeah.
feeling.
Yeah. So Thor explains to SG-1 that they used a command code in that like had been found left over in the android Reese to call forth all replicators and bring them to Hala, which is an Asgard planet. And they set a time dilation trap there to contain the replicators. But it didn't work. And basically, the time dilation trap would set it so that everything that was happening on the planet Hala was happening at like 10 to the fourth speed less than the rest of the time. So like for every 4 hours that happened on the planet, 10 years would have happened in real life.
I
Basically, in
was
order
very pleased that Jack did not understand this either, and that Sam was explaining it to us because I was
super
not there.
confused. But
Yeah,
so basically it would set it up so that the Asgard could have extra time to figure out what to do about the replicators.
right.
But it didn't work. And so they need SG-1 to go in and fix the time dilation. But their ship is so much more low tech than anything that the Asgard have that it's the only chance that the replicators will let anyone onto the planet. Because if an Asgard ship goes up, they will try to steal that technology. But of course, Earth technology kind of sucks. And at this point, the
Sure.
replicators have the entirety of the Asgard home planet. They don't need Earth's ship.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's the credits.
Yay.
Yay. Um, Jack is going back and forth. He's wavering on whether he'd like to do this or not. It seems like a suicide mission.
Mm-hmm.
But while Jack is still deciding, Thor basically says he doesn't give a shit what Jack's decision is. He takes them back to Earth and back to Earth's orbit, and hologram, like zoomy zoom, exchanges the prisoners on the ship for food.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, all right, I put the supplies on the ship, got rid of the extra people, you're good to go, and then pulls them back out of Earth's orbit.
What a
And
time.
and Jack's like, I don't get to like I'm a commander of a unit, not of like the world. I can't just like decide that this is a cool thing to do. And Thor's like, it's okay. There's time. You can talk to the general while we're moving. Great.
Thor's like, we're gonna pretend like I'm giving you an option, but we all know I'm right and we all know you're gonna do this. So we're gonna
Yeah.
keep moving while you figure yourself out.
Yeah. It's like the delay, we don't have time for it.
Right.
Um, well, at SGC, Tyler and Harriman are like freaking out and trying to figure out what is going on and reporting all of the missing supplies to Hammond, along with all of the new people that have just appeared. And Hammond's like, "Are you sure the gate never opened?" They were like, 100%. I think we might notice that.
Right. Right.
But while they're doing this, Jack's hologram appears. And Jack's like, hey, think I'm gonna need you to call the speed dial on that red phone of yours.
He's like, my grandchildren?
Yes, because my favorite fact about General Hammond is even though that red phone is the president's phone, his granddaughters are speed dial number one. The president is speed dial number two.
Yeah.
Now, my only thing about that is I don't remember how speed dials on landline phones work. I'll be very honest. I had a landline phone. I never had a landline phone when I was old enough to be in charge of programming speed dials.
Yeah. I think there's so I have done
Okay.
that. My parents still have a landline, so like I understand the process.
Yeah.
But it's been so long since I've done it. I think there is just a button that says speed dial and you like push that
Yeah.
and then push the number. So I don't think it's like
Right. Okay. Because I was gonna say on a cell phone, you can't program the number one as the speed dial.
right. I think you can on a regular phone. I think you can't do zero, maybe. Like I think it's
Right. Well, because zero
zero's
would be the
usually
operator.
right. So I think you can do the rest though.
Okay. Because I know a cell phone, one is your voicemail. You can't change that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
which is dumb because I don't call my voicemail. I use the visual voicemail.
Right, correct. As you should, as you should.
Anyway, um, but so we've determined that president is speed dial number 2. But anyway, the Hammond needs to call the president because some shit's about to go down.
Mhm.
The president does in fact approve the mission, and Thor. Oh, but he does not approve Jack naming the spaceship.
This scene was so funny. He's like, "Ugh, the president didn't go for it. And she's like, I'm sorry, the mission. He's like, no, 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 that's fine. That's totally okay.
That's fine. And she's like, oh, okay. And he's like, he didn't go for my ship name. And she goes, Jack, you can't name the ship the Enterprise.
I know very little about Star Trek, and I knew this one.
Yes, I do have some trivia about that at the end.
Ooh, can't wait.
But so Thor has given Sam a facsimile interface to practice with to try to make sure that she knows how to repair the interface for the time dilation device. So she's working on that. And obviously Jack's not just going to stand there and stare at her working on that. So he goes to the cargo bay where the food has been beamed to get something to eat. And it turns out Thor doesn't really understand refrigeration. So he just brought food, including a lot of ice cream. So Teal'c and Jonas are already in there trying to eat all the ice cream before it melts. And that scene, the dialogue of the scene is incredibly, intensely like philosophical and highbrow. But the action of the scene is some of the most lowbrow comedy I've ever seen. And it is just my favorite juxtaposition because they're literally fighting over cartons of ice cream. And Teal'c is basically playing like magical ice cream shells with Jack to make sure that he gets more ice cream than Jack does. All the while, they're talking about whether something that is alive is always evil, or if it just has the ability to do evil acts without the concept of evil. Which is 2 different shows. I don't know what's happening.
Correct. It is completely off the rails.
So because Jack is just convinced that the replicators are evil, and Jonas is like, are they though? Like, if they don't have any morals, are they just doing evil things? Like, what does it mean to be evil? But then the ship begins to slow down, and Sam calls them out of their weird boys' coffee clutch. And Thor tells them that they're on their own now. He's pulled them out of hyperspace, but he can't go any farther because the Asgard ships can't pass into the thing. And he's like, but also, before you go, I have some more bad news. Turns out the time dilation device did get turned on. The replicators reversed it. And so now they have had like 400 years already go by in the time that we've been trying to get there.
Yep.
Who knows what the replicators could possibly accomplish in that amount of time? Really, really strong.
Literally everything.
Yeah. So then we get a quick scene that is completely irrelevant to the plot, kind of, except for that to the long-term plot, because Jack is having Jonas practice using a gun, which is really only relevant in another detail that we've talked about before, of details that people don't see. Jonas hasn't been allowed to have a real gun yet.
Yeah.
Which, if we hadn't already talked about this on the podcast, I think the scene would have been nonsensical.
Absolutely.
So they approach the atmosphere. The replicators scan their ship and allow them to keep moving because, again, low tech. And they head toward the solitary structure on the planet. There's only one. There's just one structure on the whole planet. And despite an intense storm, they land safely. There was a lot of scenes in this episode that were like great acting, but unnecessary.
Yeah.
They arrive and head out of the ship, and they discover that the planet's surface, the entire surface of the planet, is made of replicator blocks.
I just like had very low hope for the SG team. I I understand that that's not the correct feeling because we do know the show continues.
Right. But
I was like, I don't know. I don't get it. I don't see how this is going to come out.
yeah. There's no sign of active bugs though, so that's confusing.
Right. That was also like I just didn't quite get it, what was going on.
So they head inside the structure. Sam finds the interface and starts to get to work on it when a person shows up and says the others are coming, and 5 more people come out. I'm sorry, 4 more people. There's 5 people total. And the character who's clearly in charge, we learn later his name is First, but the character, so First is clearly in charge. He's like, I need Sam to stop. He's like, tell her to stop that. And Jack's like, how about no?
Right.
And he's like, you don't understand. We're trying to save you. Like, we need to get rid of the replicators. They're terrible. And everyone just, all the people just kind of start to giggle a little bit to themselves. And they're like, no, but you don't understand. We are replicators.
Just like a really terrifying fact. I know you said they were going to be like a big thing was going to happen with them. And I don't know if we're done with them. I don't really know where we're going, but that is absolutely wild that Reese made her pieces that were all computer based, all technology based. They built on technology. And it's like all the technology created like atoms of human material. Like it's like,
yeah.
I still don't really understand the process because like I don't understand how you've created human matter out of nothing.
They haven't. They basically have the form and figure of humans, but like they say later in the episode, they're made entirely out of like basically like not bio, but like molecular level computer chips. They're like
right.
So it's basically like any kind of AI that has skin and a face, but
yeah.
So it's like the same as like a silicone robot. It's just that the silicone is so like, you know what I mean?
It just looks silicone. These look like people.
Yes.
Because I guess because it's so small.
It's so small. They have the technology to basically like make whatever they want out of whatever they want. And also think about the Asgard technology that they've been stealing. The Asgards are literally clones. The Asgard technology they have is that of cloning. Like it all does make sense.
It does make sense. I don't connect it well in my brain because my brain doesn't understand cloning technology.
That's fair. Yeah, no.
And the molecular levels of the replicators.
Which is totally fine. But yes, no, when you were like, the replicators, I don't know if they're gonna come back. And I was like, they're gonna come back. You're not at all prepared for how they're gonna come back.
0%.
They're people now.
Yay.
And immediately as soon as they say that the replicators, Jack just starts shooting.
No forethought. It's fine.
No, just immediately starts unloading his entire clique on these people. Too bad absolutely nothing happens.
0%. 0% of things happen. And now why is that?
Because in general, when we saw the replicators being shot up by the low-tech guns, they were able to like blow up because the technology was so low in comparison. But also you're thinking of like, think of it like the idea of Legos. If you have like one of those kitty Legos where it's the big plastic blocks and then you hit it, it's way more likely to fall over than if you shoot like a Nerf dart at like a tiny, like a real mini Lego figurine.
Right.
So when these replicators were able to reduce the size of their individual nanites to the point where they could then build a human like structured person, the interlock is so small that the guns aren't pushing through anything anymore.
Got it. So they're just kind of like bouncing off of them at this point?
Yes.
Okay.
It's literally like the difference between shooting Nerf darts at a toddler Lego set versus an adult Lego set.
Got it. That's why there's no Mark II, because it's like solid bulletproof.
Yes.
Cool. I mean, not cool, but I
No,
get
no. Yes. You're like, I don't
it.
like it, but I do actually understand it.
I do understand it. I do not approve of it.
So Sam does obviously move away from the device because they're a little fucked right now.
Sure,
Um
sure. Yeah.
and SG-1 reluctantly turns over their weapon, and then they like try to shake Jack's hand and he's like, I don't like this. They're like, you don't even know us.
We would have already killed you by now if we were going to. Like, come on.
Right. So they shake Jack's hand and then first just sticks his entire hand in Jack's head.
Which we learn later is not necessary to do this process.
Correct. They can just like mind meld themselves by touching each other, but he just goes.
He very dramatically, like so unnecessary.
Yes.
Ugh.
And he enters Jack's unconscious mind. And oh, I know what excerpt Jeff King wrote.
Oh,
This
the kid.
yes, the
Oh,
scene
oh,
this because
my heart.
he wrote the episodes the episode
The
he
second
wrote
episode. Was it the second episode?
no, it was Cold Lazarus. So it was episode like 5 or 6, but it's the episode
Oh.
where the crystal creature becomes Android Jack and sees everything that happened to Charlie. He wrote Cold Lazarus. That's why. Anyway, so they're standing in the gate room. First starts like digging through Jack's mind. He tells him that he knows his iris code, and he's trying to figure out things that are important to Jack, and he shows Jack Charlie's death. And Jack's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, why would you do that? He's like,
Yeah.
it's fine. You are responsible for it. You're right about that. All that guilt you feel, it's legitimate.
God, this episode was so horrible.
Yeah.
Like horrible.
And then he's like, and every time you try to argue with me, I'm gonna make you relive that. And if that doesn't answer your question about whether they are just doing evil or they are evil, I don't know what does.
Yeah, because that's the most evil thing I can think of. Like,
yeah,
it's one thing to like, and I mean, there are levels, of course, but like it's one thing to just bring up all your bad memories, to bring up the specifically your worst memory. And then there's another level to be like, now I'm going to tell you all of your worst thoughts about yourself are true. Like it's not only like mind consuming, but mind like altering. It's
Well, and also up to this point, the replicators, yes, they have killed people and taken things over, but they've also up to this point just been mindless, robotic creatures that are feeding themselves. Like
they've never been sentient.
Right. And even the level of sentience that they were shown when they were answering Reese, it's like a creature that is killing because that's what it has to do. Like we don't
it's like a pet, it's like an animal, not like a human.
Exactly. We don't get mad that tigers kill deer. Like we don't like it, but that's how they eat. Like and it's like the thing. And so these replicators, they were destroying technology and destroying cultures because that's how they survived, that's how they grew, that's how they thrived. But now it's showing that give them any level of acuity of sentience and they will destroy everything.
Oh my God, it's I don't know if you can answer this question. Is this the last time we see them? Are they like stuck now?
No, we will see them again.
Oh,
they're way too big a villain for that to be how they end.
That's what I thought. I hate them and they make me really sad. I'm not sure that I was like this sad was almost as sad as Daniel Jackson for me. Like I cried. It was and I don't get that emotional about Stargate usually.
I mean, the question at the end of the episode of like is just it's heavy. It's fucking heavy.
So heavy. And this was supposed to be my break, the episode I watched to take a break from watching true crime. And I had to go back and watch true crime to take a break from this. Like it was rough. It was
but so they begin a journey to every place Jack's ever been through his mind. Then we have a scene where Teal'c is waking up and you're almost the lights are blue enough that you're almost not sure if he's awake. but then it discovers that he is back in the ship and everyone else is there and he wakes them all up and they're all disoriented and they're alive and freaked out and have no memory of what happened. They do all know that they were mind probed and but they don't have any concept of what happened.
Right.
They all have the same experiences. So they decide to see if it would be worth it to detonate the hyperdrive and just blow up the whole planet because they're like, at this point, I don't know what else to do.
At this point, maybe. But also, like, would that destroy these human? Like, they're bulletproof. Are they blow up proof too? Because like then they're not gonna have the same issues with like a gravitational pull of like our lungs would collapse if we were pulled away from a planet with gravity
yeah.
or somewhere. But like they're not. They're machines. Like, would they just survive and float off into the world like they did when they were on the ship the last time that it blew up?
So Jack wants Teal'c to call Thor and tell him that everything's a mess and that he fucked up royally.
Yeah.
And Jonas is like, Jonas is being Jonas / Daniel Jackson, and he's like, I don't think this is a good idea. He's like, we should have a conversation with them. We should understand them. Like, I don't think blowing them up is gonna help. And we should learn about the replicators. And Jack is like, absolutely not. And they go to meet up with Sam in the engine room where she's trying to disable the hyperdrive. And it turns out Fifth, who is one of our replicators, is there. Talking to Sam. No, it's Fifth.
I thought he's fourth.
No, it's Fifth.
Are you sure?
I'm sure.
Okay.
Yeah, no, he's Fifth. He's talking to Sam and he invites him to dinner and he's like, just so you know, without them even saying anything, he goes, just so you know, an explosion wouldn't help. It would actually just give more energy for the replicators to continue building things. So please don't do that.
Yeah.
It's like you would die for no reason. And he's like, but first wants you to come have dinner. All of the food from your ship's already been moved into the temple. And so he's like, okay, and he leaves and so that they can go meet him. And they're like, there's something different about this one. Something's going on here. I don't understand. So they go back into the temple and they arrive and the replicators have all of their food out for them. They have dinner laid out. And it turns out that the replicators decided that Reese being their creator, once they understood that Reese was their creator, they wanted to model themselves in the image of Reese. And they reversed once they had fingers, they reversed the time dilation, specifically to give themselves more time to build an army. And they were like, but what about the flaw in Reese's programming? And they're like, well, we discovered what the flaw was. We tried to get rid of it. Oh, and at this point, they've now made a sixth person. The sixth one wasn't there. In the amount of time that they got probed and put on the ship and back, there's now a new android.
Yep.
But they fixed the bug. They made Fifth, and then it turned out that Fifth was too weak, too human, and so they decided they didn't care about the bug, and they would reinstall the bug on Sixth. So they don't like him very much.
I mean, that tracks for it's hard to be pure evil with a touch of humanity.
Right.
So
and it turns out that they're feeding them to make them strong enough so they can probe them again because they just want to keep finding out everything they can possibly find out about all of the planets that they want to take over.
And like it almost feels like the evil villain plan where they're like, I'm going to tell you my entire plan. And it's like, that's the key that gets them stopped, you know? But it's like at the same time, they're so strong that doesn't matter.
No, it's one of those things where it's like, I'm going to tell you my plan and that's the key to stop me, except for actually no, because literally nothing they could possibly do would stop them.
Yeah. Ugh.
Yeah. It's like so Hansel. It's like Hansel and Gretel if the witch hadn't told Gretel to put her own brother in the stove and just done it herself.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know why that's where my mind came to, except for like feeding them to make them strong. I was thinking of the witch fattening the kids up.
Fattening them up. Yeah, that does make sense. Because I was like, I also don't know how you got there, but it's okay.
Fifth just tries to stop it. He's like, can we just not? We already have the information we need. Now we're just like fucking around with them.
Mhm.
And first it's like, no, because 4 of us entered the mines. There are 2 more of you. You have not experienced this, and you should. You need to understand that you're not a human. You need to see the chaos in their minds and understand how disorganized and pathetic they are and broken so that you don't want to be like them anymore.
Right. Mhm. Mhm.
So Sam volunteers to do it because she can see that this kid is not
Right.
not about it.
Quite the same. Not quite the same as the
Yeah.
rest.
And so Fifth mind melds with her, but he actually shows her his mind instead of looking into hers. And he's like, we're all connected. The androids are like the replicators are one brain system. We're all connected, but the way that we have been built, the idea of having a consciousness, we still have an unconsciousness. We still have a corner of our minds
Right.
that doesn't exist to everyone else. Um, and he's like, so this is the only place that I can talk to you. And he agrees that he wants to help Sam and he will do what he needs to do to like change the time dilation device, but only if he can leave with them. Because if he fixes the time dilation device and they escape, the rest of the replicators will kill him. And Sam promises that she will take him. And she promises that by fixing the time dilation device, he won't kill anyone. He'll just freeze them because he doesn't want to kill his brothers.
Which that part's true.
Yeah. Um, I think when she says she would take him, I think that part was true too.
I think it was meant to be too.
I don't
I
think she
think
was
so too.
lying. I don't think she was lying, but I think she also it was kind of a cop out because she didn't have to lie because she knew Jack would make the decision for her.
Yeah. Well,
She
I don't know that she knew he would decide that at
No,
that
no, no.
moment.
I don't think she knew which way he would decide, but I also
Mm,
do know that she knows very well that she
right.
can
That she's
say
not the
yes,
final call.
that yes, she can say yes
Yeah.
all she wants, and if Jack says no, she doesn't get to do anything about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, um, they wake up from their probe, and Fifth has already finished making the adjustments to the device. He's just waiting for Sam to enter her command code and set the timer. Um, Jack sends Jonas and Teal'c to the ship, and Sam gets the device ready and sets the timer. And she and Jack tell Fifth that they're setting it for 5 minutes, but Jack signals to her to only set it for 3. And then they tell Fifth to wait 3 minutes and head to the ship. Um, they leave and they're getting into the ship, and First catches Fifth and tells him he has to stop the device. And Fifth stands up to him and says no because he thinks he's going to be able to get out of there. And Fifth is like, they're going to take me, they're going to save me. And he was like, no, they're not. They lied to you. Check the timer. And he looks at the timer and he sees that it is over. And then we just get the time starts to slow down and we see everything stop for them because time is moving so slowly for them compared to us. And Fifth is just crying. Which is interesting because how he doesn't really cry, but he does cry a little bit. And then it's like, how did he make tears? I don't know. I don't understand. Um, that's not how robots work. Um,
I
and then
can't.
we have a scene on the Prometheus where Jonas and Sam are feeling really guilty and talking about things. And they basically tell Jack that they really hope he was right and that this was the right thing to do.
I know. And I, in my heart of hearts, think it probably was because if you let the replicators loose, even if a piece of him comes off, like then it immediately starts replicating again. Like there are a lot of causes. However, there's also a part of me that along the lines of Jonas and Sam feel like they may have started somehow creating humanity within the replicators. And I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if it's like when you change a vampire that they are a vampire that's like bloodthirsty, but then they have this like
Yeah.
sense of humanity within them that you can sometimes pull out, but is it always there? Or what happens if they divert back? Like, doesn't matter. I was upset
Yeah.
the whole time, regardless of what the answer is.
And that the thing is there isn't an answer. I think it's really fascinating because like in interviews, Joseph Malozzi said that there isn't an answer. There are things that happen later, and obviously, like I said, the replicators come back, and the question comes back of whether this was the right thing to do or not. But at the end of the day, with a lot of things with war, there
Mhm.
isn't a right thing to do. And they kind of did that on purpose because
Yeah.
Jack is the only one of them who has the ability to make that kind of decision. And we keep going back to the fact that like Sam, despite being military, is really bad at being military,
Yeah.
and no one else on the team is. And so
Mhm.
Jack always has the burden of making decisions that nobody else would really make.
Which is why he is the one in charge.
Yes. And
Mhm.
you have this idea of like, yes, it's a sci-fi show, it's a space show, it's an alien show, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, it's a military show. Like,
Mhm.
and that's a really interesting way to look at it when you like look at it from that perspective, is that like sometimes the right answer is still the wrong answer.
Right. And because sometimes there is no right answer
Because like they either they take Fifth with them and everything's
with
great
the risk.
and everything's great and they study him and they learn how to defeat the replicators, but then they also still end up having to defeat him at some point because the replicators
Yeah.
are all connected. They take him, it turns out badly, he double crosses them and dies.
Mhm. The whole
They
world ends. Yeah.
they don't take him and they still have the time to figure out things, but the replicators kill them in the end, blah blah blah. They don't take him, he gives all the information he has and turns against them. Like
Right.
there's
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 no good answer.
yeah. So the only real trivia I have for this episode is that again, it goes back to this being a military show. There's a joke about the Enterprise, and we talked about this earlier, and Jack wanting to name the thing, the spaceship, the Enterprise, Sam saying you couldn't. There are actually like two ways to look at this joke. It's like a twofold joke. And one of them is the idea of breaking the fourth wall and like making the comment Star Trek versus Stargate. But the
Yeah.
other one is also a little bit of breaking the fourth wall, but it's also kind of a dig because Star Trek is based off of the Navy. Like the Starfleet in Star Trek is actually based off of the
Mm.
Navy, and there is a very famous naval ship called the USS Enterprise, which was what
Oh, I did know that. Yeah, yeah,
which
yeah.
is what the Star Trek ship was named after. This
Mm.
show is an Air Force show, and the Air Force and the Navy don't always get
Right.
along.
Hmm. Hmm.
So the joke was both Star Trek versus Stargate, but also Air Force versus
Military
Navy.
versus military.
Yeah. So it's funny
Hmm.
that it works on multiple levels. They have a lot of times where the jokes in the show are actually like multi-layered jokes that if you
Yeah.
don't know all the pieces to it, you don't
It's
even.
really good writing, but it's hard writing. Like
Yes.
sometimes like you have to know a lot of
It's
things.
very niche writing, and these guys are really good at it.
It's
So
very intelligent writing too. Like you have to
yeah,
have certain levels to do it.
yeah. All right. Well, who do you want to punch?
So I want to punch first. Um, no question. I also kind of want to punch Jack, but I understand he did the right thing, so I want to punch first because he sucks.
That's fair. I mean, first is really the only correct answer. Except for that, I'm gonna punch Thor because I love Thor.
Mm,
I love Thor.
mm.
Um, and I understand Thor is doing the best he can for his people. But you really done put our people in a fucked up situation and just walked away.
Right. Yeah.
After they saved your consciousness from a spaceship and gave you a new body, you done said, thanks, but can you maybe fucking die?
Right. I'm going to sacrifice you to save my planet now. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool, cool,
So,
cool.
um, who was your MVP?
I'm gonna go with fifth because he unintentionally sacrificed himself to save our team.
Yeah. I'm gonna go weirdly. I'm gonna go Jonas.
I don't think that's that weird. I thought that was a
I think Sam is probably who I like
lean towards.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
Sam is probably the more reasonable second choice after fifth. But I want to go
Yeah.
with Jonas because is Jonas takes a really interesting point of view and spot on the team. And in a way it makes up for Daniel being gone, but in a way it's very, very different. Because Daniel, while he gets emotionally involved in things, at
Mhm.
the end of the day, Daniel was only ever trying to understand culture. Like
Right.
he wasn't trying to like he never like wanted to save a Goa'uld or anything like that. He just wanted to understand the culture. He's an archaeologist. If everybody was dead and he just got to read things, he'd still be fine.
Yeah, like
Um,
he's a researcher, like and a like a learner, but not necessarily like an empath. Like
right. But Jonas just has this way of finding the human in everyone and everything and asking my favorite question to ask in any kind of like sci-fi, horror, drama, cop show. Who are you to decide? Like,
right.
and he does it in a way where he doesn't question Jack's authority. He doesn't question Jack's understanding or experiences. He doesn't question the human aspect of wanting to protect the world and that there is a good and that there is an evil. But he very much questions who gets to decide where that line is. And
Yeah.
it's fascinating. I would love to have seen the way Jonas reacted to things like the Nazi episode or some of the season one culture stuff that we did with the Braca divide or the weird aging culture in Brief
Yeah.
Candle. Like I would have loved to see his take on that because I think that quote that he says about evil is really kind of the whole point. Like, is there evil or is every living thing just capable of evil?
Yeah. And I think that like with him, it's so like he's all of our characters are developed and we know who they are.
Yeah,
He is the most complicated character I feel like we have
for sure.
because, and I don't know if it's the writers have written 6 seasons, so now they like are creating a new character and they were able to put so much more behind him than they were in the beginning. Not that our
Right.
characters are bad, but he's just definitely much more
Well,
like
and part of it
people.
is because we have had 6 seasons to
Yeah.
understand the other three. And
Mhm.
like there are parts of Jack that we know Jack's always going to be jaded. Jack has X, Y, and Z that
Yeah.
happened in his past, and we know them. We don't know enough about Jonas. And to be fair, Jonas doesn't know enough about Jonas because
Right.
Jonas lived in a culture where he just did what he was told and he thought he was doing the right thing. And then his entire world was flipped upside down when he realized no one there
Yeah.
was doing the right thing. And so he's not only new to us, he's new to himself and he's new to understanding things. And it's a really beautiful journey.
Yeah. And he has that military understanding, but because of his country being flipped upside down, he also has an understanding that like maybe that's not always right. Like
Yeah.
even though I know to follow when I'm supposed to, I know that I will do this. And then he has that empathy, which we saw even before he kind of started re-examining himself with his professor, who he was like, you did save the world. Like we see that he really wants everyone around him to
Uh-huh.
be the best version of themselves, like you were saying. And so he's able to empathize with anyone and anything. And because he's not human, he can even empathize even more than someone like Daniel Jackson, who, is obviously human and doesn't have that same capability.
Yeah.
So I really like Jonas as an addition, and I'm in with Jonas.
Yeah. It's a really good character.
I do have one more theoretical discussion since we are going to see the
Absolutely.
replicators again.
Absolutely.
Um, do we think, or should we think, with creating these new people, like, is it with each one they're going to become more humane, or is it like when you have six people, one of them's going to come out different? Like, one out of six people
I
is a
don't
psychopath, one out of six replicators is a
know.
human. You know,
No, no, no.
like,
Yes, I understand what you're saying totally, but no, because they specifically said that they attempted to fix the
mhm,
flawed programming, and that's
right.
what made Fifth
Mm,
human. And so they decided to abandon that attempt and that they
mm,
would rather be powerful than fixed. So
Right.
then you see that sixth is more like first and second than she is like fifth. And so I think that what that means is that they won't have any. Like fifth is going to be the anomaly. He's going to be the broken one. He's going to be the island of misfit toys of the replicators because they don't want that weakness. That
So then
humanity
in
is weakness.
that case, could we theoretically, as the human race, create more quote unquote broken replicators to fight the non-broken replicators? So we have strength on both sides, but they have the humanity to understand that the real replicators are trying to destroy the whole world, whereas these are
I
trying to live in community.
I think if Reese was still in the picture, yes.
Okay.
But I do think that Reese being basically them using the last bits of what was left of her like computer core basically to summon the replicators kind of lost that as an option.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. A lot of theoreticals. I'm very ready for more of the replicators because I want to see like we saw them in such like every time we've seen them, it's been like we've ramped it up 100
Uh-huh.
because we saw them and it was, not great. Our little Lego spiders were, crazy and we didn't like them. Then we see them with Reese, which is a whole other element of like she's destroyed her entire world, which is why they even came about.
Yeah.
And then we go this other level where they can become like robotic, bulletproof humans that then also want to build an army to take over the world. Like it's like we go from 0 to 100 every time we see them. And
Yeah.
so I'm not sure how much more we can go, which makes me a little nervous.
Well, one thing I will say about Stargate, they never lack for ideas.
That's true. That's
The
true.
execution
So
might not always be as good as you want it to be, but the ideas, they're full of
ideas
them.
are always there. That
Yeah.
is true. Mhm.
Um, they don't always finish the thought, but the thought is there.
Mhm.
All right. Well, with that, I think that's the end of our theoretical discussions. It is next week for Stargate. It'll be a much different
Calmer
conversation.
episode.
It'll be a much different conversation. But unfortunately, we still have one Thursday between now and then, and I don't have words
Unfortunately, I like how you start with
because just
it's not unfortunate for the world. It's just unfortunate for
for
Monday today.
for us. Well, no, for it is because the episode of
Oh, you meant
Hannibal.
the actual episode. I thought
I
you meant like it was unfortunate we have an episode in
Oh,
between the
no,
two.
no, no.
But you mean the episode
It's just
itself.
going to be an unfortunate episode of the podcast because it was an unfortunate episode of Hannibal. And
Right.
not in the cynical way that I usually say things like that. Just I'm not prepared. So
No one
join
is.
us on Thursday for me taking a deep dive into what is left of my mental health. And we will see you if you have I have to tell you guys how to talk to us. Not that you will, but you can find us on all social media at Death and Aliens or email us at deathandaliens@gmail.com. You can follow me everywhere at EMKAY_superstar.
And you can find me at CE Cloud 13.
And with that, we will see you later. Bye.
Bye.